Hello and welcome to Science Night Tales. I am glad you have found this quiet moment to drift. Tonight, we will go through a type of world that seems impossible, yet exists all across the galaxy. We often think of planets spinning like ours, day turning to night, night turning to day. But many worlds have stopped turning. We are going to explore planets locked in an eternal stare with their stars. One side forever burning in sunlight, the other forever frozen in darkness. We will look at the quiet, stable twilight zone between them, where life might find a way to exist in the balance. You do not need to brace yourself against the heat or the cold tonight. You are safe to observe from a distance. You can simply let the stillness of these suspended worlds wash over you. If this perspective helps you find balance in the extremes, you're welcome to like or subscribe. For now, let go of the day and let's drift toward the twilight together. Some planets never turn. Not slowly, not gradually, not over hours or days. They never turn at all. One side of the planet always faces its star. The other side never does. So one hemisphere stays in permanent daylight and the other stays in permanent darkness. No sunrise, no sunset, no shifting shadows, just endless day on one side and endless night on the other. It sounds strange. It sounds almost impossible, but it's real. Astronomers call these worlds tidally locked. They orbit their star in such a way that their rotation slows down over time. Gravity pulls on them, friction builds up inside them, their spin gradually fades, and eventually their rotation matches their orbit. One full turn for every full trip around the star. So the same face always points toward the light, and the same face always points away from it. This already happens close to home. The moon is tidally locked to Earth. We only ever see one side of it. Now imagine that, but on a planet, with a star blazing on one side forever. Some exoplanets are like this, not rare, not theoretical. They are out there right now, quietly orbiting, quietly holding the same orientation, quietly divided into two permanent halves, one side glowing, one side frozen, and between them a narrow boundary, a line that never moves, the place where day ends and night begins. It's called the terminator line, a stable edge between light and dark. Strange, right? A world where time doesn't bring morning or evening, a world where noon never fades, a world where midnight never lifts. And yet, these planets can be stable. For millions of years, sometimes for billions. No seasonal swings, no daily temperature cycles, just long-term stillness. On the day side, sunlight never stops falling. The ground stays warm, the air stays hot, the sky never dims. On the night side, sunlight never arrives. The surface stays cold, the air stays thin and heavy, the sky stays black. Two extremes, locked in place, and the planet keeps going, slowly orbiting, slowly carrying its divided face through space. This isn't science fiction. These planets have been detected around red dwarf stars, around small, cool stars that burn steadily for trillions of years. Their habitable zones are close in, so close that tidal locking becomes almost inevitable. If a planet forms there, it slows down, it locks in, and it stays that way. You might think a world like that would be broken. Too hot on one side, too cold on the other, unlivable, unstable. But something quieter happens instead. Heat doesn't just stay where it lands. Air moves, winds form, atmospheres circulate. Warm air flows from the day side toward the night side. Cool air flows back. A slow, steady exchange. Not storms in the usual sense, not violent chaos, just long-term circulation, like a planet breathing very slowly. The star keeps shining, the planet keeps orbiting, and the same face keeps looking into the light. It's a simple configuration, but it leads to a completely different kind of world. A world without mornings, without evenings, without seasons. A world that stays in one configuration for ages. And right now, there are probably thousands of them in our galaxy alone. Quietly circling their stars, quietly holding their divided form. Some of them might be rocky, some might be ocean worlds, some might be covered in clouds, some might even have atmospheres thick enough to smooth out the temperature differences. We don't know yet. We only know that tidal locking is common and that these worlds are real. It's easy to imagine rotation as something every planet must have. But gravity doesn't care about our expectations. It reshapes motion over time. It drains spin away. It pulls worlds into synchronized dances. And once a planet locks in, it stays locked, the same side, forever. So now imagine this. You're not on the surface, you're in orbit. Far above one of these planets. You're not rushing, you're not falling, you're just drifting. The star is on one side of your view, a steady disk of light. Below you, the planet curves into space, half of it bright, half of it dark. The dividing line is perfectly still, no moving shadows. No creeping night, just a fixed boundary. You move slowly along the planet's edge. On one side, the surface reflects steady light. On the other, it absorbs darkness. There is no sound here, no wind, no atmosphere brushing past you. Only silence, only slow motion, only a world holding its position in space. It feels calm, not dramatic, not violent, just steady. You keep drifting, closer now. The light side grows brighter, the dark side grows deeper, the contrast sharpens. You can see cloud bands on the day hemisphere. They don't shift much. They stay in roughly the same places, year after year, century after century. Storm systems that don't travel, they just remain. The night hemisphere is quieter, cold enough that gases can freeze out of the air. Ice can form, frost can build up. The sky above it stays black, always. And then there's the narrow zone between them, the twilight ring, where the star sits permanently at the horizon, never rising, never setting, just hovering. Low light, soft shadows, mild temperatures. This region can be stable too, not scorching, not frozen, just balanced. On some tidally locked planets, this twilight zone might be the most gentle place, the place where liquid water could exist, the place where conditions stay almost constant. No day-night cycle, no seasonal swings, just a steady environment. It's strange to think about, a world divided into three permanent regions, the blazing day side, the frozen night side, and a narrow band of calm in between. And the planet never changes its pose. It never turns its face away. It never hides one side to show the other. It just keeps showing the same halves to its star, over and over. You keep drifting closer. You're still above the boundary line. The star sits low in the sky from here, always at the same angle. The light spreads sideways, not directly overhead. The surface below looks muted. Colors don't shift with time. They stay fixed. No long shadows creeping across the ground. No golden hour, no dusk, just the same soft illumination. And yet, this place is not dead, not necessarily. The atmosphere keeps moving, the winds keep circulating, heat keeps flowing. The planet keeps redistributing energy, slowly, gently, without drama. And all of it happens quietly, without anyone watching, for millions of years, for billions. This is the kind of world that doesn't rush. It doesn't swing between extremes. It holds them. On one side, always warm. On the other, always cold. In between, always balanced. A system locked into place. It feels almost like time itself has slowed down here. Not stopped, just stretched. You move closer still. The Terminator line is beneath you now, the exact place where light gives way to darkness. It's not a sharp edge, it's a gradual transition, a slow dimming, a soft cooling. The air changes density, the light thins, the ground temperature drops steadily, step by step. No sudden cliff, just a smooth gradient. You can imagine standing here, not burning, not freezing, just standing in a steady environment. The star would stay low in the sky forever. It wouldn't move, it wouldn't set, it wouldn't climb higher. It would just remain, hour after hour, year after year. You might lose track of time entirely. There would be no visual cue that a day had passed, only the slow passage of years marked by orbit. This is what tidal locking creates. Not chaos, not destruction, just a very different kind of stability. A stability shaped by gravity, a stability shaped by time, a stability shaped by the slow erosion of motion. And it exists. Right now, somewhere out there, planets quietly holding their divided faces to their stars. Planets with permanent day and permanent night. Planets with a narrow ring of calm between extremes. You're still drifting, not rushing, not falling, just moving slowly closer to that boundary, closer to that quiet edge, the place where light fades into darkness, the place where heat fades into cold, the place where balance quietly forms, and as you drift toward it, the world beneath you stays exactly the same. No movement, no rotation, just a steady planet, locked into its slow orbit, holding one face to the light, holding one face to the dark, and waiting quietly at the line between them. As you begin to drift closer to that boundary, toward the soft twilight zone where day meets night. The strange part is, this doesn't happen suddenly. Planets don't just stop spinning one day. It takes time, a lot of time. When a planet forms, it usually spins fast. Leftover motion from the cloud of dust and gas that created it. At first, it rotates freely. Day and night come and go. Light and darkness trade places. But gravity doesn't stay quiet. The star pulls on the planet, not evenly. The side facing the star feels a stronger tug. The far side feels a weaker one. That difference matters. It stretches the planet slightly, just a tiny bit, enough to create friction inside the planet's body. Rock rubbing against rock, magma shifting under pressure. Energy is lost as heat, and spin slowly fades, not in years, not in thousands of years, in millions, sometimes billions. Each orbit, the star's gravity keeps tugging, keeps dragging, keeps stealing a little more rotational energy away. The planet turns, just a little slower, then a little slower again, until something very specific happens. The time it takes the planet to rotate once becomes the same as the time it takes to orbit its star once. One rotation per orbit. That's the lock. From that moment on, the same face always points toward the star. The planet still moves, It still travels around its star, but it no longer turns relative to that star. It shows the same side again and again. This is called synchronous rotation, tidal locking. It's the same reason we always see the same side of the moon. The moon still rotates, once every 27 days, but it also orbits Earth in 27 days. So its rotation matches its orbit, one turn per trip, always the same face. The same thing happens to planets close to their stars. The closer a planet is, the stronger the gravitational pull. The stronger the pull, the faster tidal locking happens. Around small, cool stars like red dwarfs, the habitable zone is very close in, so planets there lock quickly, sometimes in a few million years, which is nothing in cosmic time. Once a planet becomes tidally locked, it doesn't unlock. There's no natural way to speed it back up, no outside force to restart its spin. The friction that slowed it down keeps it in place. The system settles into a stable configuration, one face toward the star, one face away, forever. This isn't a rare outcome, it's the expected one. Any rocky planet that orbits close enough to its star will eventually lock. Not maybe, not sometimes, eventually. Gravity always wins in the long run, and once the lock happens, the planet enters a new kind of rhythm, not a daily rhythm, an orbital rhythm. The planet's day becomes as long as its year. If it takes 20 Earth days to orbit its star, then one rotation also takes 20 Earth days. If it takes 100 days, then one rotation takes 100 days. Day and year become the same thing. But from the star's point of view, nothing changes at all. The same hemisphere always faces it, always absorbing energy, always receiving light, and the opposite side, always turned away, always in shadow, always dark. This locking doesn't care about oceans, it doesn't care about mountains, it doesn't care about atmospheres. It happens to rocky worlds, it happens to icy worlds, it happens to gas giants. If the orbit is close enough and enough time passes, the lock is inevitable. And it's quiet. There's no dramatic moment, no visible event, no sudden stop, just a slow, almost invisible change in spin rate, year by year, million by million, until rotation and orbit line up. And then they stay that way for billions of years. The planet doesn't notice, it doesn't resist, it just settles into equilibrium. A stable balance between gravitational forces and internal friction. A configuration that wastes the least energy. From the outside, it looks simple, but the consequence is enormous. A planet that never shows its other face. A planet without a true day-night cycle. A planet split into permanent hemispheres. This is why one side never sees night, and the other never sees day. Not because something special happened, not because the planet is unusual, but because gravity did exactly what gravity always does. It pulled, it slowed, it synchronized, and then it held the planet in place. So when we talk about worlds with endless daylight and endless darkness, we're not talking about rare exceptions. We're talking about a natural outcome, a quiet, inevitable result of orbital physics. A result that has already happened to countless planets across the galaxy. And once you understand that, the paradox from the beginning starts to feel less strange. Of course, one side always faces the star. Of course, the other never does. Given enough time, there was no other way it could have ended. And now that the motion has settled, now that the planet is locked into place, we can begin to look at what that endless daylight actually means. The lock has happened. The planet no longer turns away from its star, so the light never moves. There is no sunrise, there is no sunset, no long shadows sliding across the ground, no evening, no morning, just steady illumination. From one side of the planet, the star is always in the same position in the sky, not rising, not setting, not drifting. It stays fixed. If you were standing there, the light would feel permanent, not bright in a sudden way, not dramatic, just constant. Hour after hour, year after year, the same amount of energy arriving, the same direction, the same angle. Solar energy doesn't sweep across the surface like it does on Earth. It pours down on one hemisphere and stays there. Every moment, every orbit, every year, there's no rotation to spread that energy around. So the day side keeps absorbing heat, and it keeps absorbing it. The star's radiation hits the same regions again and again. The ground warms, the air warms. Oceans, if they exist, you warm from the top down. Heat builds slowly, then reaches a balance, because even permanent sunlight doesn't increase temperatures forever. At some point, the planet begins to radiate as much energy away as it receives. Energy in, energy out. That balance creates a stable thermal state. The light itself never changes. The brightness doesn't pulse. The angle doesn't shift. The spectrum stays the same. Everything about the illumination is fixed, from one day to the next, which are no longer days at all. The sky looks exactly the same. The star sits in place, a constant presence, no twilight, no dusk, no dawn, just continuous light. If the planet has clouds, they form under that same unchanging heating pattern. If it has winds, they are driven by the same steady energy input. Nothing resets overnight, nothing cools down and reheats in cycles. There is no daily temperature swing, no rhythm, no clock. The only timescale left is orbital, and even that doesn't change the lighting on the day side. One hemisphere lives in a permanent noon, not a harsh, flickering noon, a stable one, a calm one, a noon that never shifts its position. This is what eternal daylight actually means, not endless brightness in a dramatic sense, just steady energy, steady warmth, steady illumination. A system that no longer oscillates, it has settled. The star keeps shining, the planet keeps facing it, and nothing interrupts that exchange. This isn't chaos, it's a steady state, a long-term equilibrium, a world that has found a thermal balance under constant light. And once that balance forms, it stays that way for millions of years, for billions. The planet doesn't get hotter each year. It doesn't get colder. It remains in that same range, the same climate pattern, the same lighting conditions, an entire hemisphere defined by permanent exposure, an entire hemisphere shaped by constant energy. And that steady input begins to shape everything else. The surface, the atmosphere, the long-term climate. Because when sunlight never moves, weather begins to change in a very different way. The day side is not chaotic, it's not random, it becomes structured. The hottest point is always the substellar point, the spot directly under the star. The place where the light hits most directly. That region stays the warmest, always. Temperatures gradually decrease as you move away from it, outward in slow gradients. There are no shifting heat waves, no cold fronts sweeping in overnight, no seasons, no annual cycles. The climate map freezes into place. Heat zones don't migrate, they stay where they are. The atmosphere adjusts to this. Air rises steadily at the hottest point. It moves outward, it cools, it sinks farther away, then flows back, over and over. The same circulation pattern, year after year. Storm systems, if they form, don't drift around the planet. They stay near fixed locations. They become stationary, anchored to the same thermal gradients. A storm might spin in the same place for decades, for centuries, because nothing pushes it away. No rotating planet to drag it along, no changing sunlight to disturb it. Clouds form in predictable bands, the same zones of condensation, the same zones of evaporation, the same vertical motion. Everything becomes persistent, long-lived, stable. Even extreme heat doesn't mean instability. It means consistency. The dayside climate becomes predictable, quietly organized, not fluctuating, not oscillating, just holding its shape. If there is an ocean on the dayside, it doesn't experience tides driven by daily heating. Surface temperatures don't swing. Evaporation rates stay constant. The same winds blow in the same directions, at the same speeds. The same pressures exist in the same places. A climate locked into position. There is no seasonal variation, no axial tilt effects, no polar summers, no polar winters, just one unchanging thermal map. One hemisphere defined by light, defined by warmth, defined by steady energy input. It sounds extreme, but it isn't violent, it isn't chaotic. It's a world that has stopped changing in time, a system that has settled into long-term balance. A planet where even intense heat becomes ordinary, becomes normal, becomes stable. And that stability sets the stage for what comes next, because the heat doesn't stay on one side forever. It has to move, slowly, quietly, through the atmosphere toward the dark side. And that movement is what shapes the rest of this divided world. The heat doesn't surge, it doesn't spike, it doesn't race across the surface. It stays, it holds its place. On the dayside of a tidally locked planet, temperature becomes geography. There is a warm center, the substellar point, the place directly under the star. That point remains the hottest location on the entire world. Always, not for a season, not for a year, for as long as the planet remains locked. Heat spreads outward from that center in slow gradients, not sharp edges, not sudden drops. Just a gradual easing, step by step, degree by degree. The farther you move from the star-facing point, the cooler it becomes, and that pattern never shifts. There are no heat waves, no cold snaps, no shifting climate belts. The map of temperature stays fixed. It becomes a permanent feature of the planet's surface. Cloud systems form where rising air meets cooling zones, and they stay there. They don't drift across continents. They don't dissolve overnight. They don't reform somewhere else the next day. They hover in place. The same bands, the same layers, the same shapes, year after year. If storms form, they don't migrate. They spin, slowly, quietly, anchored to the same pressure gradients. A storm might exist in one location for decades, for centuries, because nothing dislodges it. There is no rotating surface dragging it sideways. No changing sunlight to disturb the balance. The energy feeding it stays constant. So the storm stays, long-lived, predictable. If the planet has oceans, the surface temperature doesn't swing. It doesn't cool at night. It doesn't warm in the morning. There is no night. There is no morning. The surface stays within the same thermal range. Evaporation rates stay stable. Humidity levels stay stable. Cloud cover patterns remain steady. Rain, if it happens, happens in the same regions, over and over. The climate stops cycling. It settles. It holds. Even extreme heat becomes ordinary here. Not dramatic, not destructive, just present. A background condition. The land adjusts. The atmosphere adjusts. The entire system reaches an equilibrium. Energy arrives. Energy leaves in equal amounts. And that balance holds for millions of years. For billions. There are no seasons, no axial tilt shifting the sun's angle, no long summers or long winters, just a permanent noon, a permanent heating pattern, the same thermal map unchanged, the same pressure zones, the same circulation anchors, the same cloud belts, everything persistent, everything stable. It's not chaos, it's not turbulence. It's a climate that has finished changing, a planet that has found a long-term steady state. And once that state forms, it doesn't drift, it doesn't evolve quickly, it stays, quietly, continuously, holding its structure, holding its patterns, holding its shape in time. This is what stability looks like on a locked world. Not calm in the sense of cool, calm in the sense of predictable, reliable, unmoving. The heat does not need to be violent to be intense. It just needs to be constant. And constant heat becomes a foundation, a framework, a baseline for everything else. And that baseline creates motion, because even a stable climate still has gradients, still has differences, still has energy that wants to move. The hot air near the star-facing point rises. Slowly, continuously. It expands, it lifts, and it begins to drift outward, away from the hottest region toward cooler zones, toward the edge of the dayside. This is where the atmosphere begins to flow. Not in bursts, not in gusts, in slow, steady currents. Winds form not from storms, but from imbalance, from the quiet difference between hot and cool. The rising air spreads outward at high altitude, then sinks as it cools, then flows back toward the center along the surface. A circulation loop, a global engine, turning endlessly. The same winds blow in the same directions, at the same speeds. For millions of years, jet streams form, but they don't snake around the planet. They don't wobble. They don't migrate. They trace fixed paths, encircling the dayside, skirting the boundary between light and dark, carrying heat away from the star-facing hemisphere, delivering it toward the colder regions. Pressure slowly equalizes, not completely, but enough to soften the extremes, enough to smooth the gradient. The atmosphere becomes a conveyor, moving warmth from one side of the planet to the other. Not fast, not violently, just steadily. Every moment, every year, every million years. There are no sudden wind shifts, no changing weather fronts, no chaotic turbulence. Just a slow, continuous redistribution of energy. The winds don't need to hurry. There is no deadline. No sunrise, no sunset, no cooling cycle that demands speed. The system has all the time it needs, and it uses it. The circulation patterns become fixed features, as permanent as mountain ranges, as stable as ocean basins. They don't drift. They don't break apart. They persist. quietly, relentlessly. The same loops of air, the same pathways, the same transfer of heat. This movement shapes everything: the climate, the cloud belts, the temperature gradients, the boundary between light and dark. Because all that carried warmth eventually reaches the edge of the dayside, the place where sunlight ends, where the ground stops receiving direct energy, where temperatures begin to fall. And there, at that boundary, something different begins. A transition, a slow blending between the permanent day and the permanent night. And that boundary is where the world changes again. The light here never fully leaves, and it never fully arrives. You are drifting along the line between the two halves of the planet, the place where day and night meet, the place where neither one wins. The temperature here is different, not hot, not cold, just steady. The heat coming from the dayside spreads out and thins. The cold drifting in from the nightside softens, and they meet in the middle. They don't collide, they don't create turbulence, they balance. The air settles into a narrow range of temperature. It stays there, hour after hour, year after year. There is no sunrise here, no sunset, no sharp change in light, no sharp change in warmth. Everything remains within a gentle band of conditions. Warm enough to prevent constant freezing, cool enough to prevent constant boiling. If liquid water can exist on this planet, it exists here, not because conditions are perfect, but because conditions are stable. The ground holds the same temperature, the air holds the same pressure, the humidity holds the same range. Nothing pushes the system out of balance. Clouds form above this twilight region, and they remain. They don't drift away, they don't break apart, they don't grow and collapse. They hover in place, a thin, constant layer. They reflect some of the incoming light. They trap some of the outgoing heat. They smooth out any small temperature differences. There are no passing weather fronts, no storms moving through, no sudden changes in wind. The air moves, but slowly, softly. The same currents follow the same paths, carrying warmth from the dayside, carrying cool air from the night side, and releasing both into this band of equilibrium. The winds here do not surge, they do not stop, they do not change direction. They remain consistent, a gentle flow, the same speed, the same direction, the same pattern. The temperature gradient across the twilight zone is shallow, not a drop, not a sharp edge, just a slow, gradual shift, degree by degree, step by step. The entire region becomes a climate that does not fluctuate, a climate that does not oscillate, a climate that does not reset. It holds. If water condenses here, it does not immediately evaporate. If it freezes near the darker edge, it does not remain frozen forever. It melts, slowly, quietly. Everything happens at a pace set by constancy. There is no urgency, no season, no cycle of extremes, just a long-term average that never shifts far from itself. This twilight band does not expand. It does not shrink. It does not wander across the surface. It remains fixed in place. The same width, the same temperature, the same conditions, for millions of years, for billions. And as those conditions remain steady, something deeper begins to settle. Not just temperature, not just pressure, but chemistry. Because once the climate stops changing, once the air stops shifting, once the clouds stop moving, the chemical processes slow down too. Reactions happen at the same rate. The same compounds form. The same compounds break down over and over. The composition of the atmosphere becomes predictable, not because nothing is happening, but because everything that happens at the same pace, and that stability carries forward into the movement of water, into the cycling of gases, into the slow reshaping of the surface. Everything that follows the rhythm set here, in this band of balance where nothing needs to hurry and nothing needs to correct itself. The air above the twilight zone holds moisture. It evaporates from warmer regions closer to the dayside. It condenses as it drifts toward cooler areas. Clouds form and remain. They release water back to the surface, not in heavy rain, not in sudden storms, in steady, light precipitation. The same places receive it, again and again. There is no rainy season, no dry season, no interruption, just repetition. Water flows across the surface, not in fast rivers, not in sudden floods, in slow movement, guided by gentle slopes, pulled by gravity, unchanged by seasons. Because there are no seasons, some of that water evaporates again, returns to the air, joins the same circulation loop, the same path, in the same timing, over and over. The hydrological cycle becomes a closed system, a loop that maintains itself. The rate of evaporation equals the rate of condensation. The rate of precipitation equals the rate of runoff. Nothing builds up too fast. Nothing drains away too quickly. Everything remains within a narrow range. The atmosphere reflects this stability. Chemical reactions slow, without temperature swings, without pressure fluctuations. The composition of the air becomes steady. Carbon compounds form and break down at equal rates. Water vapor stays within a consistent range. Trace gases remain stable, not increasing, not disappearing. Photochemical reactions on the dayside happen continuously. Destruction of those compounds happens continuously. The balance holds. Even volcanic gases, if released, disperse slowly. They mix evenly into the atmosphere. They are absorbed into long-term cycles. Nothing spikes, nothing overwhelms the system. Everything is diluted by time. Everything is buffered by stability. The slow movement of water erodes rock, not in landslides, not in sudden collapses, in steady abrasion, grain by grain, layer by layer. Sediment accumulates in the same places. It does not get washed away. It does not get redistributed. It builds up slowly. The surface reshapes over geological time, but not unpredictably, not chaotically, in steady patterns, driven by the same wind paths, the same water flow, the same temperature gradients. Even the deeper chemical cycles follow this rhythm. Carbon is absorbed, released, reabsorbed. Nitrogen moves between atmosphere and surface, slowly, evenly. No sudden chemical imbalances, no runaway reactions. The planet becomes chemically quiet, not inactive, but steady. Every cycle has time to complete. Nothing is rushed, nothing is interrupted. This is what endurance looks like, not motionless, but unchanging in pattern. A world where processes do not compete, they align, they synchronize, they settle into loops that sustain themselves, and those loops persist. Through eons, through planetary ages, through slow geological shifts, the climate does not reset. It does not destabilize. It does not swing into extremes. It remains what it has become, a system held in long-term balance, where water, air, and chemistry move together, quietly, continuously, unbroken, and beneath those cycles, something even slower continues. The movement of land, the gradual reshaping of the surface, a deeper endurance, a geological patience. That carries this stable world forward in time. The surface here does not hurry. Time moves across it, but nothing on it reacts quickly. The ground has been shaped by the same winds, the same light, the same slow water movement for millions of years. There are no seasons to reset the terrain, no winter to crack rocks apart, no spring floods to carry soil away, no summer heat spikes to expand and contract stone. Everything happens at one steady rate. Erosion still exists, it just happens slowly, grain by grain, layer by layer. Wind brushes across exposed rock, not in bursts, not in storms. In a continuous, gentle flow, it removes tiny particles, one after another, never speeding up, never stopping. Water flows across the same paths. It does not surge, it does not dry out. It follows the same shallow channels, wearing down the same edges, smoothing the same ridges, over and over long spans of time. Sharp features soften, jagged edges round off, cliffs become slopes, slopes become plains. Nothing collapses suddenly, nothing rises suddenly. The surface slowly approaches an equilibrium shape, the shape that matches the forces acting on it, and those forces never change. If there are mountains here, they grow low and wide. If there are valleys, they become shallow and broad. Everything trends toward flatness, toward smoothness, toward stability. Tectonic movement, if it exists, is minimal. The interior of the planet cools slowly. Heat escapes at a steady rate. There are no dramatic crust shifts, no frequent earthquakes, no rapid mountain building events. Plates, if they move at all, move so slowly that their motion is almost unmeasurable. Volcanic activity fades over time. Without strong internal heating, magma does not rise easily. Eruptions become rare, then rarer, then almost non-existent. The surface becomes geologically quiet, not dead, but settled. Even impact craters remain preserved. Without erosion cycles to erase them, without rainstorms to fill them in, without tectonic uplift to distort them. They stay. Their edges soften, but their shapes remain. A record of distant events held in place for eons. Sediment accumulates, not in thick layers, in thin, steady deposits. Dust carried by wind, particles carried by water, they settle and remain. There is no major redistribution, no powerful currents to move them elsewhere. The same low areas continue to collect material. The same high areas continue to lose it. Everything stays arranged as it has been arranged. But the landscape becomes predictable, not because nothing changes, but because the way it changes never changes. The surface holds its form. The air above it follows the same circulation paths. The water follows the same routes. The chemistry follows the same cycles. Everything locks into place. This is geological stillness, not a lack of activity, a lack of variation. A world that does not reinvent itself, a world that does not reset, a world that continues forward with the same shape, the same patterns, the same quiet processes. And as you drift across this steady terrain, as the light from the star fades, the air cools further, the clouds thin, the temperature drops. Slowly, gently, and the surface beneath you changes again, not in structure, not in form, but in energy. You are moving away from the warmth, away from the light, toward the side that never sees the star. The boundary is not sharp. There is no edge. The brightness diminishes by degrees. The sky darkens step by step. Shadows lengthen, then merge, until there is no direct light at all. The temperature continues to fall, not suddenly, not violently, in a steady descent. The air grows denser, the winds slow even more. The circulation weakens. There is no sunlight here to drive motion, no heating to lift air upward, no temperature contrasts to accelerate flow. The atmosphere becomes almost motionless. The surface cools until it freezes. Water, if it reaches this side, does not remain liquid. It solidifies. It forms ice, layer upon layer. There is no melting cycle, no thaw, no seasonal return of warmth. The ice remains. It grows thicker over time, not rapidly, in steady accumulation. Snowfall, if it happens, does not vanish. It stays where it lands. It compresses into ice. It adds to the frozen terrain. The ground beneath the ice does not warm enough to soften it. Everything becomes locked into place. Rock, ice, dust, all held in a permanent state. The sky above is black, not the black of night with stars, but the black of absence. The star never rises here. It never casts a glow. It never paints the surface with color. There is no twilight, only darkness. The air is still, so still that particles hang suspended. They fall slowly, almost imperceptibly. The cold stabilizes the atmosphere. Nothing rises, nothing mixes, nothing stirs. The circulation that carried heat from the dayside weakens as it reaches this far. Only a thin trace of warmth arrives, and it is not enough to change anything. The night hemisphere becomes a reservoir of cold, a storage of frozen energy, a sink where heat accumulates and never escapes. The terrain here does not erode. There is no flowing water, no chemical reactions driven by sunlight, no thermal expansion to crack rock. Everything remains exactly where it is, for millions of years, for billions. Craters remain unchanged, ice layers remain stacked, dust layers remain undisturbed. Nothing is carried away, nothing is brought in. It is not empty, it is not lifeless. It is simply quiet. A side of the planet that exists in permanent pause, a surface that holds its shape without interruption. And as you continue drifting across this frozen hemisphere, as the darkness deepens, the cold becomes absolute, the motion becomes almost zero, and the silence becomes complete. This is the other half of the balance, the half that absorbs cold the way the day side absorbs heat, the half that completes the system. And beyond this stillness, there is more to notice in the way ice forms, in the way energy moves, in the way this frozen world remains connected to its bright opposite side, through slow flows, through long cycles, through quiet exchanges that never stop. The ice here does not rush, it forms slowly. So slowly that you could watch it for years and see almost no change at all. The cold is constant, not sharp, not fluctuating, just steady. The temperature never rises high enough to soften what is already frozen, so every new layer stays, every thin frost, every settling crystal, every drifting grain of ice. They land, they remain. Snowfall, if it happens here, does not melt, it does not slide. It does not collapse, it settles, it compresses, it becomes part of the surface. Glaciers exist on this hemisphere, but they do not flow the way glaciers do on Earth. There is no seasonal melt to lubricate their base, no summer warmth to thin their edges. They sit, they thicken, they spread outward by pressure alone, by the slow weight of accumulated ice pushing gently in all directions. Their movement is measured in centimeters per year, sometimes less, sometimes almost nothing. Crevasses do not open and close, they form, and then they stay. Frozen in place, sharp lines etched into solid ice. They do not heal, they do not widen, they simply exist, holding the same shape. Sublimation happens here, but it happens slowly, so slowly that it feels like a thought more than a process. Ice molecules lift from the surface and drift into the thin atmosphere. But the rate is so low that the ice sheet does not visibly shrink. New frost replaces what leaves. Deposition balances sublimation. Nothing is lost, nothing is gained. Everything stays in near perfect equilibrium. There is no liquid water, no flowing melt, no hidden rivers beneath the ice. The base of the glaciers remains frozen solid against the rock below. The interface never warms enough to allow movement, so the ice becomes part of the terrain, not something moving across it. The surface texture remains unchanged. Ridges, plates, subtle ripples formed by ancient accumulation, all preserved, all static. If dust settles on the ice, it does not sink. It does not wash away. It forms a thin, dark layer, absorbing a small amount of heat, but not enough to change anything. The temperature remains far below freezing, so the dust stays, layered into the ice record, a timeline written in faint stripes, each one marking a quiet moment in a very long history. The atmosphere above the ice is thin, cold, almost inert. There is no strong convection, no rising air, no sinking air. The air barely moves at all. Without sunlight to energize it, without temperature gradients to push it, the atmosphere rests. Particles hang suspended. They drift downward slowly, then stop, held in place by cold stability. The ice does not crack from expansion. It does not fracture from contraction. The temperature never changes enough to stress it, so the ice remains structurally calm. It does not groan. It does not shift. It does not release energy. It simply holds its form. Over time, scales that feel unreal. Thousands of years, millions, hundreds of millions. The same ice sheet thickens, the same surface texture remains, the same faint patterns stay etched in place. Nothing erases them, nothing reshapes them. The night hemisphere becomes a deep archive, a record of quiet accumulation, a place where energy arrives slowly and never leaves quickly. Heat carried from the dayside reaches this hemisphere, but it is not enough to melt anything. It spreads thinly, it dissipates into the ice, and then it is gone, stored, locked away. The frozen surface absorbs it and holds it without visible change. This is cryogenic stability, not dramatic cold, not violent freezing, just permanence, just endurance. A state that does not evolve quickly, a system that resists change. Even impacts leave lasting marks. If a small asteroid strikes here, the crater remains. Its edges stay sharp, its interior stays frozen. There is no erosion to soften it, no water to fill it, no tectonic movement to distort it. It becomes another feature added to the static map.
To listen to.
Over time, The entire hemisphere approaches a final form, not because it stops changing, but because the rate of change becomes almost zero. Everything that happens here happens at the slowest possible pace, and that pace never speeds up. This frozen side of the planet is not empty. It is not inactive. It is simply settled. It holds cold the way the day side holds heat. It balances the system. It completes the circulation. And as you continue drifting across this quiet ice, as the stillness deepens, the sense of time stretches. The scale of endurance becomes clearer. This is not just frozen terrain. It is a demonstration of patience, of persistence, of processes that do not rush and do not fade. And beyond this frozen stability, there is something even larger to notice. The way the entire planet maintains this balance, the way these extremes hold together across eons, the way nothing here needs to change quickly in order to continue existing, the way endurance becomes the defining feature. And as your orbit continues, as the ice remains unchanged beneath you, you begin to feel the length of time in a deeper way. The sense that this world is built not on movement, but on staying. Time moves differently here, not because it slows down, but because nothing marks its passing. There are no seasons, no cycles of warmth and cold, no expansion and contraction, no rise and fall, just continuity. Years pass. Nothing changes. Decades pass. Nothing changes. Centuries pass. The surface remains the same. The ice remains the same. The atmosphere remains the same. The temperature remains the same. There is no moment when something suddenly shifts. No threshold where stability breaks. No event that resets the landscape. Everything that exists here continues to exist in the same form, the same shape, the same position. Millions of years pass. The glaciers are still here. The frost layers are still here. The dark plains remain unchanged. The craters remain sharp. The ridges remain fixed. Nothing erodes them. Nothing smooths them out. There is no rain, no flowing water, no wind strong enough to reshape anything. No tectonic plates sliding beneath the surface. No volcanic cycles bringing heat from below. The planet is not geologically restless. It is quiet. It is settled. The internal heat has mostly dissipated. The core no longer drives dramatic activity, so the crust stays still, and the surface becomes a permanent record, a timeline written in ice and dust, each thin layer marking a moment that passed without disturbance. The day side continues its constant heating. The night side continues its constant cold. The atmosphere continues its slow circulation. Heat continues to move. Cold continues to hold. The system keeps working. Not because something pushes it, but because nothing interrupts it. This balance does not need maintenance. It does not require adjustment. It does not need correction. It is simply the natural result of the planet's locked position, of its steady orbit, of its unchanging orientation. The star rises and sets nowhere, so nothing else needs to rise or fall either. 1 billion years pass. The star grows slightly brighter. The planet absorbs slightly more energy. But the change is gradual, so gradual that the system adapts without disruption. Cloud patterns adjust slowly. Wind patterns shift slightly. The twilight zone moves a small distance. Nothing collapses, nothing fractures, nothing ends. There are no mass extinctions here, no sudden freezes, no sudden warmings, no runaway feedback loops. The planet does not experience drama, it experiences persistence. Every process here runs at low intensity, low speed, low variation. It is not fragile, it is not volatile, it is not delicate, it is durable, it is resistant to disruption. The kind of stability that lasts not because it is perfect, but because it is simple. Simple temperature gradients, simple circulation, simple chemical cycles, simple energy flow. Nothing spikes, nothing crashes, nothing spirals out of control. And because nothing changes quickly, everything changes safely. The atmosphere slowly loses a small amount of gas, but volcanic outgassing replaces it. The ice slowly sublimates, but deposition replaces it. The star slowly evolves, but the planet adjusts its equilibrium. Every slow loss is matched by an equally slow gain. Time keeps passing, the surface keeps holding its form, the clouds keep circling, the twilight band keeps existing in the same place. Nothing needs to hurry, nothing needs to resolve, nothing needs to end. This is what endurance looks like. Not strength, not intensity, not motion, but continuity. The ability to remain without effort, the ability to exist without disruption, the ability to persist without change. This planet has no memory of chaos. It has no record of sudden catastrophe. It has no scars from instability. Its entire history is written as a long, smooth curve. No sharp turns, no steep drops, no dramatic reversals. Just one steady state carried forward across deep time. And as you remain here in orbit, watching a world that does not rush, that does not fluctuate, that does not destabilize, you begin to feel the scale of that endurance. Not as something distant, not as something abstract, but as something real, something measurable, something continuous, a system that holds itself together without needing attention, a system that stays balanced without needing control. And as this calm persistence settles into your awareness, as the silence stretches across centuries, as the same frozen surface remains beneath you, you begin to sense how all these parts belong together. The day side, the night side, the twilight band, the winds, the clouds, the ice, the slow cycles, the unchanging orientation. They are not separate systems, they are one system, one integrated whole. And that realization opens into something larger, something that comes next. The understanding that this balance, this division, this endurance is not accidental. It is the natural outcome of how everything here fits together. And as your orbit continues, as the planet holds its quiet form, your attention begins to shift from individual parts toward the way they all connect. Everything here works together, not as separate processes, not as independent systems, but as one continuous self-regulating whole. The star's constant light on one side creates heat. That heat drives slow atmospheric circulation. That circulation redistributes energy toward the cold side. The cold side locks water into ice. That ice stabilizes surface temperatures. Those stable temperatures preserve chemical balance. That chemical balance maintains cloud formation. Those clouds regulate how much light reaches the surface, which regulates how much heat is absorbed, which regulates how fast the atmosphere moves, which regulates how much heat reaches the night side, which regulates how much ice forms. Nothing here operates in isolation. Each extreme depends on the other. The day side cannot overheat because the night side exists to absorb its excess energy. The night side cannot collapse into total atmospheric freeze because the day side exists to resupply warmth and vapor. The twilight zone cannot vanish because both extremes continually sustain it. This is not a fragile balance. It is not a narrow line where a small change causes collapse. It is a broad, stable basin where every deviation is gently corrected. If the day side warms slightly more, cloud cover increases, reflectivity rises, surface heating slows. If the night side cools slightly more, atmospheric circulation strengthens, more heat flows across the terminator, ice formation stabilizes. If winds increase, heat redistribution improves, temperature gradients soften. If winds weaken, temperature gradients sharpen, circulation re-intensifies. Every fluctuation contains the mechanism that reverses it, not forcefully, not abruptly, but slowly, quietly, relentlessly. This is equilibrium, not as stillness, but as controlled motion, not static, but dynamically steady. The planet never reaches a final state. It is always adjusting, always responding, always fine-tuning itself, but it does so within narrow limits. Limits that are set by its orbit, by its mass, by its atmospheric composition, by its locked rotation, by its star's steady output. The physics of the system define the boundaries of its behavior, and within those boundaries, everything stays contained. There are no runaway effects, no feedback loops that spiral out of control, no tipping points that suddenly rewrite the climate. The structure of the system prevents that. The same forces that create extremes also bind them together. The same gravity that locked the planet's rotation also stabilizes its orbit. The same sunlight that scorches the day side also drives the winds that cool it. The same cold that freezes the night side also preserves the atmosphere by preventing escape. Nothing here is wasted. Nothing here is accidental. Every constraint becomes a stabilizer. Every limitation becomes a regulator. The planet is not balanced because something designed it to be. It is balanced because the physical conditions leave it no alternative. It cannot spin faster. It cannot tilt. It cannot wander far from its star. It cannot dramatically alter its atmospheric structure without violating basic thermodynamics. So it remains what it is, a world divided into extremes, held together by slow exchange, held together by gradients, held together by circulation, held together by time. The longer it exists, the more stable it becomes. Volatile elements are lost early. Unstable configurations collapse early. What remains after hundreds of millions of years is the configuration that works, not optimally, not perfectly, but reliably. This is what survival looks like on planetary timescales. Not adaptation through struggle, not evolution through conflict, but persistence through compatibility. A system that fits its conditions so well that nothing needs to change. And as you look at this world as a whole, not as day and night, not as hot and cold, not as ice and cloud, not as wind and stillness, but as one connected structure, you begin to feel the weight of that simplicity. This planet does not fight its environment. It becomes its environment. It does not resist its constraints. It uses them. It does not seek balance. It cannot avoid balance. And that is what makes it endure. A world split into light and darkness, held together by invisible flows, stabilized by extremes, sustained by slow correction, existing in quiet equilibrium for spans of time longer than complex life has existed on Earth. And as this realization settles, as the entire system comes into focus, you begin to sense that this world is not an exception. It is a preview, a glimpse of how nature builds stability, not through comfort, not through moderation, but through structured extremes that hold each other in place. And that understanding is where something deeper begins. Because this balance, this divided world, this enduring equilibrium, is not just a curiosity of physics. It carries a meaning that goes beyond this planet, a meaning that waits in what comes next. For a long time, it's easy to think that a world like this must be broken. A planet where one side never sees night. A planet where the other side never sees day. It sounds unbalanced, uneven, incomplete. It sounds like something that should not work. And yet, it does. Not just briefly, not precariously, but steadily, quietly, for millions of years. Because balance does not require equality. It does not require that both sides look the same. It does not require that both sides experience the same conditions. It does not require symmetry. It requires continuity. On these tidally locked planets, the extremes do not cancel each other out. They support each other. The day side absorbs energy. The night side releases it. The day side heats the atmosphere. The night side cools it. The pressure difference between them creates motion. The motion redistributes heat. The redistribution prevents collapse into chaos. Nothing here is frozen into isolation. Every extreme is connected to its opposite. Heat does not remain trapped on the day side. Cold does not remain sealed on the night side. Slow winds move energy across the planet. Subtle currents shift temperature. Clouds form, drift, and dissolve. The boundary between light and dark is not a fracture. It is a zone of exchange. It is where extremes meet without conflict, where gradients soften, where stability emerges from difference. The planet is not struggling against its divided nature. It is using it. The permanent day is not an error. The permanent night is not a failure. They are structural features of a stable system. Together, they create continuity. The more you look at it, the clearer it becomes. This planet is not broken. It is specialized. Its division is not a flaw. It is the reason it endures. Without the day side, there would be no energy input. Without the night side, there would be no release. Without extremes, there would be no flow. Without flow, there would be no regulation. And without regulation, there would be no long-term stability. So balance here does not come from sameness. It comes from cooperation between opposites. It comes from difference held in quiet relationship. It comes from a system that allows extremes to exist without letting them become destructive. The day side does not dominate the night side. The night side does not erase the day side. They remain distinct. And because they remain distinct, they remain functional. The planet does not try to smooth itself into uniformity. It does not try to eliminate contrast. It does not try to become symmetrical. It allows its structure to be what it is, and then it organizes its internal processes around that structure. Heat flows, pressure equalizes, clouds circulate, chemistry stabilizes, not quickly, not dramatically, but continuously. And over time, that continuity becomes resilience. It becomes endurance. It becomes a form of quiet success. This world survives not by correcting its division, but by integrating it. Its extremes are not a problem to be solved. They are conditions to be managed. And management here is not forceful. It is gradual. It is patient. It is self-regulating. Nothing about this system is frantic. Nothing about it is unstable. Nothing about it is desperate. It simply works in its own slow way, for its own long timescales, for durations far longer than any human lifetime. Balance without symmetry, stability without uniformity, order without sameness. A planet that looks, at first, like a paradox, reveals itself as a quiet lesson in how systems endure. And when you step back and really look at it, it begins to feel less strange, less alien, less distant. Because the logic behind it is not unique to this planet. It is not unique to tidally locked worlds. It is not unique to exoplanets at all. It is part of how physical reality organizes itself across scales, across environments, across conditions, across extremes. The same principles that hold this divided planet together are at work throughout the universe. Everywhere you look, stability emerges not from sameness, but from regulated difference. Stars are not uniform spheres of constant conditions. They are gradients of pressure and temperature, hot cores, cooler outer layers. Energy flows outward, radiation escapes, fusion generates heat, gravity contains it, opposing forces, in balance, not equal, but complementary. Galaxies are not static shapes. They are rotating systems of matter, dense cores, sparse halos, fast-moving inner regions, slower outer arms. Gravity binds them, motion stabilizes them, tension and release. Together, planets are not uniform bodies. They have hot interiors, cool surfaces, molten layers, solid crusts, convection currents, magnetic fields, opposites again, held together, regulated, stable over immense spans of time. Even atoms follow this pattern. Positive charges, negative charges, attraction, repulsion, quantum fluctuations, energy levels, not symmetry, balance. Even the structure of space itself is shaped by gradients, density variations, pressure differences, expansion and contraction. Nothing in the universe is perfectly even. Nothing is perfectly uniform, and yet, order persists. Structure persists. Systems endure. Because balance is not about making everything the same. It is about allowing differences to exist within regulated boundaries. It is about maintaining continuity across contrast. It is about preventing extremes from isolating themselves. It is about keeping energy moving, keeping feedback loops active, keeping regulation alive. The tidally locked planet is not an exception. It is a clear, quiet example. It shows, in a simple form, what the universe does everywhere else in more complex ways. It creates stability by holding opposites together. It creates endurance by managing difference. It creates order by allowing gradients. And it does this slowly, patiently, without urgency, without noise, without drama. The universe does not rush to stabilize itself. It does not force solutions. It does not erase asymmetry. It allows processes to unfold. It allows feedback to regulate. It allows extremes to interact. And over long time scales, those interactions become structure. They become continuity. They become what lasts. This is why stars can burn for billions of years. This is why galaxies persist across cosmic history. This is why planetary systems remain stable. This is why climates regulate themselves. This is why matter organizes itself into complexity. Not because everything becomes equal, but because nothing becomes isolated. Not because extremes disappear, but because extremes remain connected. The tidally locked planet you imagined is not an anomaly. It is a visible expression of a deeper, universal pattern. A pattern that says difference does not break systems. Disconnection does, isolation does, rigidity does, unregulated extremes do. But connected extremes create balance. Gradients create flow. Flow creates stability. And stability creates endurance. This is not a poetic idea. It is a physical one. It is written into thermodynamics, into gravity, into fluid dynamics, into chemistry, into orbital mechanics, into every process that allows complexity to persist. The universe is not organized around symmetry. It is organized around regulation. It is not organized around equality. It is organized around continuity. It is not organized around perfection. It is organized around resilience, and resilience does not look smooth. It does not look uniform. It looks like gradients. It looks like contrasts. It looks like opposing tendencies held in steady interaction. That is how stars remain stable. That is how atmospheres regulate. That is how planets endure. That is how cosmic structure persists. And that is how the deepest patterns of order quietly hold everything together. When you look at that divided planet again, it no longer feels strange. It feels familiar. It feels consistent with everything else. It feels like one more example of how reality works. It feels like a distant mirror of something very close. Because the same laws shaping that planet are shaping every system you have ever known, including the one you live inside of, including the one you are. And now, after drifting through divided worlds, after watching extremes hold each other steady, after seeing how stability does not require symmetry, your attention can begin to turn inward, not away from the universe, but toward your place within it. Because the same physical laws that shape those planets are shaping you too. Right now, quietly, continuously. You are not separate from the patterns you have been observing. You are made from the same elements. You are governed by the same forces. You exist within the same slow balance between opposing flows. Your body is not static. It is a system of gradients. Warmth and coolness, inhale and exhale, tension and release, wakefulness and rest. Your heart beats, then rests, then beats again. Your lungs expand, then soften, then expand again. Your nervous system shifts between alertness and calm. Not perfectly, not evenly, but stably. You do not need perfect symmetry to remain whole. You do not need constant calm to remain balanced. You do not need unbroken peace to remain steady. Your body knows how to regulate itself. Your mind knows how to settle itself. Slowly, gently, over time. The same way heat moves from the day side of that planet toward the night side. The same way pressure equalizes. The same way extremes soften into continuity. Your breathing is already doing this. You may not even be paying attention to it, and that is fine. It happens whether you think about it or not. Air moves in, air moves out. Carbon dioxide leaves, oxygen enters, energy is redistributed. Tension eases, then returns, then eases again. A quiet cycle, a slow rhythm, a self-regulating system. Your thoughts work the same way. They rise, they drift, they fade, they return, they quiet down, then stir again. You do not need to force them to stop. You do not need to control them. You do not need to make them perfect. They are part of a natural flow, a flow shaped by attention, by memory, by emotion, by rest, by fatigue, by curiosity, by calm. The same forces that shape planetary atmospheres shape neural activity too, electrical gradients, chemical balances, energy redistribution, feedback loops, stabilization through motion. Nothing about your inner world needs to be frozen, to be stable. Nothing about your experience needs to be silent, to be peaceful. Stability is not the absence of movement. It is movement that remains within gentle bounds. It is fluctuation that does not become destructive. It is change that does not erase structure. It is tension that does not break continuity. And that is already happening inside you, right now. Even if your day felt uneven, even if your thoughts feel scattered, even if your emotions feel mixed, even if your body feels tired, even if your mind feels full, your internal systems are still doing their quiet work. They are redistributing energy. They are regulating temperature. They are balancing chemistry. They are stabilizing pressure. They are guiding you toward rest. The same way that tidally locked planet never collapses into one extreme. The same way that twilight zone remains within livable ranges. The same way that heat and cold support each other across a boundary. Your waking mind and your resting mind support each other too. Your effort and your release support each other too. Your alertness and your calm support each other too. You do not have to choose one forever. You do not have to eliminate one to experience the other. You are designed to move between states, to drift, to cycle, to settle, to rise again. And right now, you are entering a slower state. Not because you forced it, not because you earned it, but because your system is naturally shifting toward it. The same way the atmosphere of that planet moves heat toward the cold side, the same way pressure flows toward equilibrium, the same way gradients soften over time. Your body is guiding itself into rest. You do not need to manage it. You do not need to optimize it. You do not need to perfect it. You only need to allow it. The same physical laws that allow stars to remain stable, that allow planets to endure, that allow climates to regulate, that allow oceans to circulate, that allow chemistry to organize itself into life, are operating inside you at a smaller scale, at a quieter scale, but with the same reliability. You are not outside the structure of the universe. You are a part of it. Your bones contain calcium forged in ancient stars. Your blood carries iron formed in supernovae. Your breath exchanges gases shaped by planetary chemistry. Your thoughts emerge from electrical signals governed by physical laws. Nothing about you is separate from cosmic continuity. You are not an interruption in the universe. You are one of its natural processes, and because of that, you do not have to struggle to belong. You already do. You belong to the same system that creates divided planets and keeps them stable. You belong to the same system that creates extremes and weaves them into balance. You belong to the same system that allows complexity to persist across time. Your rest is not a pause in that system, it is part of it. Your stillness is not a break in continuity, it is one of its expressions. Your slowing thoughts are not a failure of focus, they are a transition into a different state of regulation. And that state is just as valid, just as necessary, just as natural, as wakefulness, as activity, as attention, as effort. You do not have to hold everything together right now. The same forces that hold stars together are holding you too. The same feedback loops that regulate planets are regulating your body too. The same slow patience that shapes galaxies is shaping your nervous system too. You are allowed to rest within that. You are allowed to soften within that. You are allowed to drift within that. You are allowed to let go of control without anything breaking, because stability does not come from constant effort. It comes from allowing systems to do what they evolved to do. And your system evolved to rest, to recover, to reset, to stabilize, to balance. You are not stepping away from the universe by sleeping. You are participating in one of its most fundamental rhythms. The rhythm of energy conservation, the rhythm of restoration, the rhythm of slow continuity. The same rhythm that moves heat across planets, moves fatigue out of muscles. The same rhythm that regulates atmospheres, regulates hormones. The same rhythm that stabilizes climates, stabilizes moods. The same rhythm that shapes long-term endurance, shapes your ability to wake up again. Steady, regulated, whole, so as you lie here, breathing slowly, letting your thoughts drift. You are not alone in this moment. You are not disconnected. You are not outside the flow. You are resting within a system that has been stable for billions of years and will remain stable long after this night ends. And that quiet realization that you belong to this continuity, that your rest is part of a larger stability, is the soft landing point of this journey. You do not have to hold onto it tightly. You do not have to analyze it. You do not have to remember every detail. It is enough to feel it, gently, quietly. And now, as this reflection begins to close, there is nothing more you need to do, nothing more you need to understand, nothing more you need to hold. You have already followed this descent. You have already drifted across divided worlds. You have already touched the idea of balance within extremes. You have already arrived at a sense of belonging. And now, you are free to rest. Thank you for taking this quiet journey. Thank you for letting your imagination orbit these distant worlds. Thank you for allowing your attention to soften. The tidally locked planets you visited will remain exactly as they are. Their day sides will remain bright. Their night sides will remain dark. Their twilight zones will remain balanced. Their slow winds will continue to carry heat. Their clouds will continue to circle. Their surfaces will remain steady. Nothing about them depends on your attention. Nothing about them will change while you sleep. And nothing about you needs to change right now either. You do not need to solve anything. You do not need to fix anything. You do not need to prepare for tomorrow. You do not need to be productive. You do not need to be alert. You do not need to be strong. You only need to rest. If your thoughts are slowing, let them slow. If your eyelids feel heavy, let them close. If your breathing feels deeper, let it deepen. If your body feels warm, let it soften. If your mind feels quiet, let it stay quiet. And if your mind is still active, that is fine too. It will settle in its own time, the same way those planetary systems settle, the same way gradients soften, the same way balance emerges without force. There is no deadline for sleep. There is no pressure to fall asleep immediately. There is no requirement to perform rest perfectly. You are already doing it, simply by lying here, simply by breathing, simply by allowing this moment to be what it is. The universe is not rushing you. Your body is not rushing you. Your mind is not rushing you. Everything is slowing together. The divided worlds you imagined are still there, quiet, stable, enduring. They will be there when you wake. They will be there whether you remember them or not. And the same quiet continuity is holding you right now. So rest, drift, soften, let go. The blue and dark worlds remain steady. The balance remains intact. The slow rhythms continue, and you are safe within them. Rest now. The quiet universe continues, and the calm continuity holds you. The blue world waits.